wherever you want to go. You want to?
You all set? Good evening and welcome. It's truly my pleasure to welcome you. My name is Janet McCauley. I coordinate the Pulpwood Queens Book Club here in Beaufort. And the Beaufort chapter is one of 800 chapters of this International Pulpwood Queens and Timber Guys book clubs, which includes chapters from 20 foreign countries. Kathy Murphy, the Pulpwood Queen, is an author and an artist that had a huge dream of connecting like-minded people together. She started Reading Nation Book Club 20 years ago, where, quote-unquote, wearing tiaras is mandatory, and oops, I don't have mine on, and reading good books is the only rule. It's the biggest meeting and discussion book club in the world. Reading Nation magazine, which I highly recommend, get online, look at Pulpwood Queens, and pull up Reading Nation magazine, features books and authors, and we are so blessed here in Beaufort with the Pat Conroy Literary Center that brings us so many events with talented authors. Robert Gwaltney's debut book, The Cicada Tree, is the March Book of the Month, and aren't we fortunate to have NeverMore Bookstore in partnership with the Pat Conroy Literary Center to host this in-person event. Robert is a graduate of Florida State University who resides in Atlanta, Georgia with his partner, where he's an active member of the Atlanta literary community, a journalist and editor for the Blue Mountain Review. He's a lifelong resident of the South, a circumstance no doubt that he tells us is an indelible mark upon his voice as a writer. By day, he serves as vice president of Easter Seals North Georgia Incorporated, a nonprofit organization strengthening children and families at the most critical times in their development. He's a champion for early childhood literacy, and all the hours in between he writes. Aside from sense of place, his writing is influenced and inspired by literary works of others. Robert conveys in a recent interview, "Though my tastes have evolved through the years, one constant remains, the impact of literature and art and music upon my writing, and my unrelenting quest to make and find beauty in the world. This philosophy is truly embodied in his beautiful writing of The Cicada Tree." We also welcome Bren McClain, an award-winning South Carolina author whose critically acclaimed debut novel, One Good Mama Bone, was another Book of the Month with Pulpwood Queens and named the Pulpwood Queens 2017 Book of the Year. Bren was awarded the 2017 Willie Morris Award for Southern Fiction, 2018 Patricia Wynne Award for Southern Literature, the 2017 Women's National Book Association Great Group Reads, but here's my favorite, Southeastern Independent Booksellers Association. She was the okra pick. I don't know about you, but okra is not my favorite thing, so I had to find out what this was about. Okra Picks are a bushel of fresh titles chosen each season that SIBA indie bookstores want to hand sell. These books should be Southern in nature, but can cover any genre, not just fiction. Southern readers love their writers. We want to be in the forefront of bringing them to a strong selection of Southern titles, not to be missed each season. She also has now received the French award for the translation of the book in French translates to be Mama Red. That was given the Prix Maya, the Best Animal Lovers Award. Bren is currently working on her next novel, which has already received the gold medal for the William Faulkner Novel in Progress. I could not think of a better author to engage us in discussion with Robert.
Thank you. Well, I'm thrilled to be sitting here with you, Robert. I'm thrilled at your success. I mean, how many of you have read the book already? Oh, awesome. How many of you follow him on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter? Okay. Do you see how he's blazing trails? And I send him little... Oh, you recognize? Oh, you recognize Dana. You really, I call him a rock star. He's doing so well with this book. If you've not read it, I urge you to read it. It is amazing. I'm going to have to tell the story right off the bat. And so he sent me the book, and I was waiting to read it a little bit closer to the time because of my brain, you know. And so, do you remember I sent you a text after I started reading it? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I think so.
Do you remember what I said? Let's see, wait a minute, it was 4 words. 4 words, and I capitalized the last word.
Yeah, I cannot remember verbatim now, but I remember the text
Well,
because I was nervous. point that you were reading it.
Here's what I said, y'all. I said, buddy, you can write. That's what I said to him, exclamation point. Do you remember
I
that?
do remember that. Buddy, you can write. Yeah.
Buddy, you can write. Oh my gosh, folks, this narrator, this 11-year-old girl in Georgia, you know, this is set in 1956. I liked it. I really felt for her. She's caught between these worlds. I mean, she doesn't fit in class-wise that she wants to fit in, nor, you know, race-wise. And so she's trying to figure out who she is in this world. And I love the fact that you had those obstacles, both of them set up for her. And y'all, it is so Southern Gothic. How many Southern Gothic? Yeah, okay. Oh my gosh, Flannery O'Connor. Yeah. He's got supernatural. But y'all, he just plunked you right down there in Georgia. Plunked you right down there in 1956, 57. And you will not be able to put the book down to follow this little girl. She wants to be, you know, she wants to be a Mayfield, and, you know, she wants to do this, and she's a piano prodigy, and she's just fascinating. And y'all buckle up because of the twists and the turns in this book I didn't see coming.
Good.
Yeah, I mean, I just thought it was so awesome. So let's talk a little bit about the book, all right? You know, I find that a lot of first-time novelists especially write what I think of as autobiographical fiction. Basically, and you all probably know what I'm talking about, you kind of write your life. You maybe not write all of your life, you just write kind of a slice of your life, you know, like in periods of your life. So I gotta ask you, is any of this autobiographical, Robert?
Well, I would say that I connect to the characters immensely.
Okay.
And the location is close to where I grew up. Providence, Georgia is a fictitious place. It's funny, I actually tried to write something that was closer to who I thought I was, which actually led me to the Cicada Tree, and it was a story that was going to take place in 1970. It was going to be a little boy, 11 years old, who was going to be the protagonist, and his mother was Annalise. And I was so fascinated with her. She really began to shine on the page, and she was making these really peculiar parenting choices. And I started asking her, what made you like this? You know, how did you become this person? And asking those questions really led me to Cicada Tree.
That's fascinating. So 11 years old. I mean, he was an 11-year-old boy, and you've got her as 11. What is it about that age that attracts you?
You know what? I don't know. I think that it's an interesting place for children because you're dawning on adolescence, and you know, it's where you begin to lose some of your innocence, I think. So yeah, 11, and I think I remember vividly being an 11-year-old boy, and and I think that maybe I keep an 11-year-old girl in my pocket.
Oh my gosh, your language is so fresh. You just, you know, I told you I might read a little something. Robert's going to read too, but so Annalise kind of has an arch rival, Marlissa, who is the rich girl in town, part of the Mayfields, and he calls it the Mayfield Shine. Tell them about what the Mayfield Shine
Sure.
is.
Well, so all of the women in the book have something extraordinary about them. Annalise is a piano prodigy. Grace, her mother, can see the future in the stitches that she sews. Miss Wesley is a remarkable intellect, and Etta Mae is a singing prodigy, and the Mayfields possess this otherworldly beauty that people call the Mayfield Shine.
Did you make that up?
I did.
Wow. See, that was one of the things I was wondering autobiographically if you had experienced that somehow, that
Well,
was an expression.
So I can tell you that there was this moment when I was probably 13, and I was outside a music room, and this car pulled up, and I won't give any names, but it's a family in a Mercedes, a blonde mother and two lovely blonde daughters. Trailing behind her, they were going in to take their piano lessons, and I remember thinking, how lovely it must be to be you. And of course, you know, I think like, you know, I've always been fascinated with people that I felt were extraordinary in some way. And I think I magnify that in Annalise. You know, there's this obsession that stirs in her when she first meets the Mayfield family. So I think I did sort of play with trying to recapture my childhood lens and some of those things that fascinated me as a boy. So that probably is how the Mayfield Shine came to be.
I love it. That's part of the freshness of his voice. As you all, some of you've read it, know. I mean, it's so fresh. It's not just, this is not a book that he just sat down and kind of rattled off and then on to the next one. This is a fully realized story of these people. Annalise, yes, who has the obsession with Marlissa. And I wanted to talk about Marlissa's school is messed up, and so she's got to go to school with
Yeah, she's got to go to public school.
yeah, public school. So she takes out of those she's got to go to school with those public school people. And Annalise is so excited, really, because Marlissa is going to be in our little school. And I just think this part is just, it'll give you a sense of his voice, and he's going to read something else too in a minute. But let's see, this is fun. Would you like to swing with Jane and me? I said, taking a chance she might spend time with the one and only bug girl. We'll have to hurry, they're the first to go. Marlissa looked to Jane as if she asked the question. I couldn't possibly swing wearing a dress. Jane and I had been swinging in dresses since first grade. Though it was a bit awkward if you tucked your skirt between your knees and kept them together. A girl could get along just fine. On occasion, when no one was looking, we jumped from the swings, our dresses parachuting for a brilliant moment until they fell back into place. That gives you a sense, a little snippet, you know, of this girl, this Annalise, this point of view that he is so totally inhabited. Did Annalise teach you anything about yourself?
Gosh, well, a lot of things I think, but well, I think that it taught. I think that if it, you know, children, you know, we can be unkind, and I think that what it taught me is that I think that if I ever had to do anything ever again as a child, I probably would have been kinder to others, maybe.
Oh, really? Had a little bit of, what was it? Little House on the Prairie. Nellie?
No.
Nothing? Okay, that's going too far, Bren.
No, I was a very quiet, well-mannered kid, but, you know, I think that we have opportunities where we could have been kinder to people, I think, along the way. You know, that's, you know, we just are all trying to be so desperate to fit in with
Yeah.
everyone else, and sometimes we make poor choices.
Right, right. So, what do you think about Marlissa? Where'd you get her?
Oh gosh, well she's complex, and I think that you understand who she is by the end of the story,
Totally.
and why she is the young girl that she is. Very sad, really. You know,
I thought so.
a bit of a tragedy there, I think. But you know, I love, you know, I won't really call them good villains, but I love a good antagonist.
Yeah, yeah.
And I find them to be the most fascinating.
Totally.
And Cordelia Mayfield, her mother, was so much fun.
Tell us about Cordelia. Yeah, she is, and when Annalise goes to the house and meets her, it's a riveting scene.
So Cordelia Mayfield family comes from Charleston, and she's wealthy. She's lovely. She's tall and slim and blonde, and she wears head to toe Christian Dior 24/7. And she doesn't have a lot of lines in the book until the end, and I did that on purpose. I wanted her to remain a bit of a mystery. So, and one of her great childhood school friends was Miss Joanne Woodward, who makes sort of an Easter egg appearance
I
in the
love
book,
that.
and she has no lines either.
No.
But actually, I sort of pulled Joanne Woodward from, I grew up in Cairo, Georgia, and Thomasville, Georgia is just maybe 30 minutes away, and so that's where Joanne Woodward was from, and any time that she and Paul Newman would happen back, it was always a big deal. And I had a friend who, his name is Anders Walker, we were in Boy Scouts together, and their family owns the senior plantation that they converted to an inn. So Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward stayed there once.
Really?
which I was so fascinated with. And I remember cornering Anders Walker, asking him a litany of questions about them. So yeah, so I guess there are elements of those experiences that I wove into.
Yeah, little snippets
the
that
story.
you pull, but she was an amazing
I just
character.
went out, I totally went off the rails with Cordelia Mayfield. Not talking about her.
No, it's perfect.
Yeah.
It's perfect what
Yeah,
you're saying.
So Cordelia Mayfield is an individual who knows Joanne Woodward. She's very elegant. She loves poetry, and she's peculiar, but people are enraptured by her.
Yeah, she's got that mystique. It's like the attraction. I mean, we can understand Annalise's attraction to these people as she's really trying to forge who she is in life.
Because early on, she really doesn't know what she doesn't
No.
have until she experiences the Mayfields. Up until that point, she's fairly content until the veils pull back and she sees that there is this element of glamour that's so close to her, but yet so far away.
Right, and I just love how she stays in her head and how I mean, I laughed a lot in your book. I mean, it's just so, I thought, what a great way of saying that. And it was such a little 11-year-old girl. It wasn't like you wrote this woman, in a little girl's body. I mean, so she had that innocence and that freshness and originality. In Annalise, I just love that spunk, I think is the word. I love that spunk in her.
Thank you. I mean, I feel like if I'm anyone in the book or close to anyone in the book, it's probably her.
Her? How are you not like her?
I might not like her. Oh gosh. I think she made braver choices than I would have, and I think she's a bit of a conniver. So I don't think that I'm that egotistical or would be that brave to do the things that she did.
Yeah, but to have a character, you've got to have some bravery. You got to do something.
Yes, you did.
Yeah,
The
you got
stakes
to
have
do
to be
something.
high.
The stakes have to be high. I mean, somebody told me one time I'd written this early draft many years ago, and this editor said, "Bren, your main character has to drive the bus and not be the passenger." And she says, "The way you got it right now, she's the passenger in a bus. She's got to drive." So we got to see her brave, and we've got to see her go for it, and you so did that.
Yeah, and then there are repercussions, of course, to those behaviors. Ultimately,
That's what makes
like
it
a
interesting.
plague of cicadas.
Yeah, talk about that, Robert. Talk about that cool component
The
of your
cicadas?
of your book. I just thought it was fascinating.
So I mean, I've always been fascinated. I think I don't remember the summer that it happened, but I was a boy in Cairo, Georgia, and I remember we were covered up with them one year. I mean, shells everywhere and the noise, and I never forgot that. And so when I wrote the cicada tree, I really sort of developed this cicada mythology. There's this sense that the nymphs are below ground, listening, and eating people's secrets, and waiting, until the right moment where they can surface and they can right wrongs and they can sing out those secrets.
Yeah. And isn't every 17 years? Am I right?
So there are 13 year cicadas and 17 year cicadas, and
Okay.
of course the cicadas that are with us every summer.
Wow. I just love that component. What have readers said to you about that?
Well, so some of them are creeped out by the cicadas.
Oh, are they? Okay.
But they like the idea of the cicadas, I think, thematically, and
Yeah.
I mean they're a metaphor, of course, too, for things to
Totally.
change. And, but yeah, there's some things that happen, at the very end with this plague that's not very pleasant in regards to the cicadas. Difficulty sleeping, certain passes of it, which is great.
Which is good.
You're feeling what I want you to feel.
So what if readers told you? I mean, you've been met with a great success. What if they told you? What kinds of things are you?
That's
hearing?
the most overwhelming part. When you write a book, I guess I realized at some point people would read it, and then when I did realize that people would read it, I was terrified, because you just don't know how it will be received, and I think in my heart I felt like it was a good story. I mean, how do you know until other people experience it? So regardless of what people thought, I would have been proud of the work that I had done. But what surprises me most, I think, anything that's been said kind about it has overwhelmed me. I think people connect to the language, they're fascinated by the story. I think that it's literary, but it's also plot driven.
Yeah, right, I agree, which is known as the sweet spot.
Yeah, you know, and when I set out to write The Cicada Tree, I think that writing a book's like being in a relationship. You better love the story that you've chosen to tell because you're gonna be with it for a while. You know, some mornings you wake up and love it, and some nights when you get to bed, you're thinking, I don't like you so much. So you do, you know, it's a commitment. But when I set out to tell the story, I thought, well, and I totally disregarded what I thought might be commercial. And I thought, I'm just gonna write something that, you know, I would love to read. Where's that book that I've been looking for all my life that I've not been able to find? And that's how I approached it.
Oh, wow, how long did it take you to write that?
Oh, gosh.
Really?
Well, I would say that if you were to compress the time, well, I guess you could say my whole life I've been ready to write.
Exactly. But when you had the little, you had the adult Annalise, and you decided, you know what, I need to find out how she got like this.
Mhm.
How long ago was that?
Let's see. So, I mean, I've been writing for a long time. I took creative writing classes in college, and I moved from Tallahassee, Florida to Atlanta in 2000. And it was shortly after I moved to Atlanta, I thought, you know, if I don't get serious about writing, it's just never going to happen. So I took some more classes. I put my butt in the seat. I joined the Atlanta Writers Club, a critique group, and I just have been writing ever since. I think that if you compress the time from 2000, probably maybe 5 years to turn out The Cicada Tree, but that's not working. You know, that's me loving it, hating it, you know, divorcing it, leaving it for a while, and then coming back to it, and then life happening along the way.
Yeah.
So I would say maybe 5 years.
Yeah, 5 years. Yeah. Why don't you treat us to, yeah. Y'all wanna hear him read?
Yeah.
I know you want to, come on.
So I can tell you, so the very first time that I ever read anything that I'd written was back when I took a class at the Margaret Mitchell House in Atlanta. And there was a gentleman named David Fulmer who taught the class. He's a really wonderful writer. And he gave us an assignment after that first class. The second class, I was the very first person he picked on to read.
Oh.
And I was so nervous, my hands were shaking so terribly that I had to press my elbows into the table because, you know, it was so important to me. I thought, okay, this is the moment where I know I may or may not have potential. What do I do? It was terrifying. So hopefully I won't shake. So I'm just going to read the opening scene of chapter 1.
Cool, I love that.
Chapter 1, Providence, Georgia, 1956. A storm was coming. Way off in the distance, its inky edges began to score the late morning sky. A low roll of thunder grumbled from the ground, tickling the bottom of my bare feet. How many more, Edame said, holding the front of her dress out before her like a basket. A bushel or two. I plucked another cicada shell from the bark of a pine that grew in the far corner of Mama's old thinking spot. Edame giggled. I love you a bushel and a peck, she sang, her voice holding a sort of magic that shot clean through, like winter static to anyone who listened. I smiled, the corners of my mouth pulling back from the lovely sound. A bushel and a peck? I laid the shell gently to rest with the others. Edame blinked down into the mound of casings. Where did they come from? I spooled a length of my hair around my finger. From the ground, I said, pulling my finger free, leaving a perfect curl down the front of my blouse. That's what your granny says. I stood tall, placing my hands on my hips, speaking deep in my best Miss Wessie voice. They needs room to grow. Edame squinted her eyes and giggled. 13 years had passed, 13 long years since the cicadas last came, years before Edame and I were born. Now they returned, digging loose from the earth, attaching themselves to trees, leaving behind a fragile crop of amber-tinted shells. It was the cicadas singing I remember best, their courting song. It was this frenetic beckoning for the affection of another that stirred the humid air to reckless speeds that summer, the summer I turned 11. The earth grumbled again. Sure must be a dark and lonely place down there, Edame said. I reckon so. I eyed a shell big as a ping-pong ball. Edame hummed slow and sad. the quality of it, a drape blocking away the happy. I knew then, before she would speak, of whom she was thinking. Poor sweet mama, she said, looking down at the ground, dark and lonely. Annalise Newell, Etta Mae Johnston, Miss Wessie called from the back porch. Get your little fannies back on in this house. Shh. I touched my finger to Etta Mae's lips. That had been a game of ours, evading Miss Wessie, our warden that summer and 3 before. Our mamas knew one another from packing pickles into jars at the Mayfield Pickle Company. My mama at the white table and Etta Mae's at the colored. You've got till I drop these biscuits to dumplings, Miss Wessie said. Then I'm breaking off a switch. Then I'm breaking off a switch, I mimicked, puffing up my chest, grabbing hold of my hips, hoping to bring Etta Mae back from thoughts of her poor dead mama, to dissolve the sadness she sang into the air. A gust of wind swept across the old garden, dozens of husks blowing free from Etta Mae's apron. Best hurry. Get on over to the bench. I motioned to the rickety seat. Etta Mae settled herself on the splitting wood, mindful of the delicate cargo gathered up in the front of her dress. I wish you didn't have to go. Me neither, she said, smiling, but I knew it was only half true. I was certain it was singing she loved best, even more than me, even if it was singing at a stranger's funeral. I'm ready. I nodded, glancing off into the horizon, a swirl of smoky clouds moving across a perfect plain of blue. I still held the enormous shell I pulled last from the tree. This one first. I positioned the prickly appendage into a coarse plait atop the center of her head. I made busy placing several more. How's it looking? I stepped back to regard my work. Just one more. Girls, Mama hollered from the house, the last dumpling's been dropped. Etta Mae took in a quick breath of air. I tucked the cicada shell into the pocket of my dress. You look beautiful. I admire the crown I made. Miss Cicada Bug 1956. I kissed her cheek. We best get. Etta Mae touched her hand to her face. Granny's done dropped the last. She hopped from the bench, letting loose the hem of her dress. Our work released to the rising wind. Come on, she said, grabbing hold of my hand. A whirl of storm blew my hair about my face. Etta Mae pulled at me, but I held firm, my toes pinching the ground. An errant shell clung to strands of my hair. I watched as it bucked in the gale, until it let loose at last, lifted by the current, swept away into the newly darkened sky. A shiver shot at my back. Only then did I loosen my toes from the earth, letting Etta Mae untether me from the spot. Only once did I look back, just long enough to watch the first lightning strike. That moment, the sky caught fire.
Right? Southern Gothic. Oh, yeah. How long did it take you to get that open?
So the opening, I started writing, I think maybe 3 chapters into the story, and I didn't have a beginning until the end.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
So
Right.
I think I didn't have the first 3 chapters, and then I circled back around and I had a sense of where to begin the story.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. That's true. You, really, the ending is embedded in the beginning.
Yeah.
If you think about it. And that's pretty cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah, who is it? Which writer? Was it John Irving? Who has to know his last sentence?
Yeah.
Have you heard that?
Mhm. I can relate to that.
Has to know his last sentence, and then he starts to write. His last sentence, and then he starts to write, because that then calls the shots on where you begin. I think that's fascinating.
It is.
So you do that too?
I have, well, first sentences are so important, so in each chapter, and I can't really start unless I have the first sentence, so it's so important to me. And I had this really bad habit early on, having these elaborate first sentences.
Oh, where you
They just went on and on and on, and people can do it well, but I felt like I would just start it off with the story was coming.
Yeah, I know. I love it. And so you went through how many drafts for this?
I think I made 3 passes.
3 passes at it?
Yeah, and the epilogue is not original.
Oh.
The epilogue wasn't written until, several months ago during the editing process, and I felt like it ends in a very dark place, which I'm completely not opposed to. I love that, and I love that when things aren't necessarily tidy at the end of the story. But I felt like the story needed a few extra beats,
Okay.
and with a little bit of hope for a reader to hang their hat on. And so I wrote it, and I asked the publisher, if I present an epilogue, would you take a look and consider it? and they read it and they liked it, and so, and I love, it's one of my favorite parts of the book.
I know, it's beautiful. Really, so you wrote that after the fact?
I did, and I cried all the way through.
Did you? How many of you have read A Gradle Bird by J.C. Sasser?
Oh, that's a wonderful book.
Okay, so Robert read it, when was it, last fall?
Just last year, so Claire Fullerton, I think you're watching us, I think she's,
Oh, okay,
she's
Claire.
watching
All
us.
right, cool.
So Claire Fullerton actually said, you know, I think you need to read Cradle Bird.
Yeah.
And, you know, thank God I did not read it while I was writing Cicada Tree. Or One Good Mama Bun while I was writing Cicada Tree, or I probably would have just given up.
No, because Robert and I, we met, what was it, last summer?
Yes.
Last summer we had a little Zoom call
We
with Mandy
did.
Haynes.
So I read One Good Mama Bun by the wonderful Bren McClain, and I just wept all through that book. And I remember just, I closed that book, and I could not stop thinking about those characters. And so I said, so I called Mandy Haynes, who I knew, and I said, do you think that Bren McClain would talk to me about her book? And she goes, yeah, I think she will. And so we zoomed.
Yeah, it was awesome, and that's where we began. And you had not read Gradle Bird yet.
Right.
But then he read Gradle Bird, and
I had another religious experience.
you did. And he was like in the stupor. He reached out to me and says, "Oh my gosh, I got to talk to her." And she was in the midst of moving to another state, blah 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 blah. And because he said, "I sent her an email and she hasn't responded,
Right.
but I just want to tell her how much."
Tell her she made a grown man cry.
Yeah, tell her she made a grown man cry. And so when I read your book, I went, duh, no wonder you love Gradle Bird so much. Another kind of supernatural elements in it, set right down there in Georgia, Southern Gothic, fresh language. I mean, y'all are, I think, kindred spirits.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're kindred spirits with JC.
And I want to meet her one day.
Yeah, you got to. Can't you see it? Can't you see it? Yeah.
So, and I felt very connected to Bren. Bren said this thing to me during our Zoom call that I always kind of felt in my heart, but I never spoken aloud to anyone. And I don't know if you remember this, but you said, Robert, there are two types of writers. There are writers that write from an emotional place, which I do, and I suspect you do. And then there are writers that write from a place of intellect. Yeah, and I've always felt that way. And neither one are better than the other. It's just how you do it.
Right. I knew you would be emotional. And you've written a glorious, glorious book. I mean, really, you and the accolades. I mean, gosh, isn't it something every day you've gotten on this blog or you've gotten this? I mean, what happened today for you?
Today, so I drove in from Atlanta.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
It was a good day. And I'm here. So I got to visit the Pat Conroy Literary Center, and I got to sit at Mr. Conroy's desk. I did want to share this one thing. So it's a magic spell, and it's how I'm able to find my 11-year-old self.
Oh, wow.
Let's see. Okay. And this always gets me for some reason. I don't know that I can read it without weeping. Will you read it for me?
You want me to, sweetie? Of course. Oh, yeah, okay. So this is how you connect with your
Yeah.
11-year-old self. Yeah. We children sat transfixed before that moon our mother had called forth from the waters. When the moon had reached its deepest silver, my sister Savannah, though only 3, cried aloud to our mother, to Luke, and to me, to the river and the moon. "Oh, Mama, do it again." And I had my earliest memory. It's from the Prince of Tides.
Sorry.
You know, that's what you're seeing in Robert is you're gonna feel in that book. You know, I'm the kind of reader, I want to be moved. I know that there are readers that don't, they just want to be entertained, right? I mean, you know, and that's fine. Listen, that's fine. But for me, I want to feel something.
Me too.
Yeah, I want to feel something. If you take me to a dark place, that's all right with me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dorothy Allison said, if you take your readers to a dark place, then give them a way back. then give them a way back. And I think that has something to do with that hope that you were talking about in your epilogue,
Yeah.
because I think you do that. Don't you?
Yeah, I think I felt like I really needed, I think you hope, I mean, what's life without it?
Right,
Even in
right.
the darkest of places, you have to have it.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm wondering, do we have any questions? I know y'all wanna, I'm hogging. Okay, yeah, Janet. So what we're gonna do is, I mean, not Janet, I'm sorry. Sorry.
Terry, and she gave me my tour today, she and Jonathan, thank you.
Oh, awesome. So, ask your question and then I'm gonna repeat it for the Facebook audience.
I thought that was interesting that you just said that you didn't write your first 3 chapters until you finished the book. And I've always wondered about other people, because I a lot of times will read a book all the way through and I'll get to the end and I'm like, oh my gosh, I remember something about this in the beginning, and then I will go back and read the first chapter. And I'm like, am I the only person that does this? I do that a lot. And so I thought that was interesting that you made that comment.
Yeah, so Terry has asked a question about what Robert said a few minutes ago about not writing the first 3 chapters of his novel until he'd written the end, and then that informed the beginning. He went back and read the first, wrote the first 3 chapters, and Terry was saying that she is experienced as a reader getting all the way to the end and going, wait a minute, there was something set up in the beginning, and then quickly turning back to go seek that out.
Yeah, so I thought that was interesting that you made that comment.
You just, I had the sense of the story, and I could sort of feel the story. You know how you can just almost sit in a moment, and in a blink, your story passed, in front of your eyes.
Yeah.
And you just know you feel it.
Yeah.
And, for me, I just started with character, and that led me eventually back to, and it bothered me some, because I'm thinking I don't have a beginning. I don't have a beginning. And when I was done, I was able to find myself.
Oh, I
quickly
love
into
it.
the beginning.
So you had an ending, but not. And do you outline? Do you? I mean,
So-
what's your process like to even get to the ending?
So, they say, and I know the writers in here do their 2 camps. You're either a plotter or a pantser. If you're a pantser, that just means that you write by the seat of your pants. So I think I'm a hybrid. I think I have to know. I'm not, I think that if I had, for me, I don't want to know everything that's going to happen in the story. I want some surprises along the way. And I know that this sounds very woo-woo, and you hear people say this, but it's true. The characters will tell you what they need to do next. Of course, you need to know, you need to have a sense of where they're going, because you have to get them there, and you don't want to go off track. But, yeah, I do like it. Those moments, I think is what's so glorious about the creative process.
Isn't it? It's
Yeah.
wonderful, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It is. Oh, and the other thing I wanted to tell everybody, it also has some shades of fried green tomato. Has anybody told you that?
No, but
Nobody's
I
told
take
you
that as a
that.
huge compliment. I love that.
Really? No, it does, y'all. It has some of that in it too. So yeah, but nobody's told you that.
No, but I'm happy to hear that.
Good.
I actually went to the Whistle Stop Cafe and had fried green tomatoes.
Well, there it is.
On my 40th birthday, it was I went with a couple of friends. We went to Milledgeville and we visited Flannery O'Connor's farm in Andalusia. We stopped along at the Whistle Stop Cafe and had fried green tomatoes. And that night, we rode back into Atlanta and saw a production of Tennessee Williams' Suddenly Last Summer. It was a great day.
What kind of 40th? Man, you lived it up,
It
didn't
was
you?
a good day.
A literary 40th.
But it was on that 40th birthday. We were in the midst of a tour in Andalusia, and I kind of untangled myself from the people, and I went out on the porch, and I remember thinking to myself, gosh, I made myself a promise, and then I've kind of made a wish. I said, I'm going to write a book that will be publishable and readable, and I want to do it by the time I'm 50. And so, the Cicada Tree came out just, in February, and I'll be 53 in April.
Awesome, buddy, you did it. Hey, come on. One of the things I didn't ask you is your process, in case we've got, writers who wants to know how you got published. How did you get published? How did you publish this book?
Oh gosh, so that was it. So I have an agent in New York, but he did not sell the novel.
Okay.
And it's just an interesting process, and it wasn't his fault. So I went the book went out onto submission, which just means that they put it out to the world with people that they think might be interested in publishing it. I've been rejected by the most wonderful people in publishing, the biggest names. So shortly after I went out on submit, and they all had lovely things to say, thank goodness, and no one ever said the same thing twice. But we went out on submission, then we went into shelter in place. And then there was just a lot of social unrest, during that period of time as well. So I've got this Southern novel out, in the world, and there were moments there where I thought, oh my gosh, it's my career as a Southern writer, is it to put, is Southern fiction going to be dead? And luckily it's not.
No,
luckily
never,
it's not.
never, never.
But there were, that was just such a really peculiar time.
Yeah.
And so I had a conversation with my agent. I said, listen, I just think I just might die if I don't get this book out into the world. And I think that a smaller press is going to be more experimental. They're going to be more open to taking chances. Are you accepting of that? I said, well, yeah, whatever you feel that you need to do. And so that was my road to publication, and it's been a pretty good experience. I had a lot of creative input on the cover and being able to suggest things like the epilogue. And it's funny because back when I was contemplating what a writing career would be like, I never really initially thought that I would pursue an agent. I thought, I would be happy. Really, I don't set out to conquer the world. Really, my goal is to be allowed to write books and to be able to have humble readership and to be able to come and do things like this and to be able to engage with readers who appreciate your work. I think that's what I'm most excited about. So I do actually get to go to New York for a night next week to do a reading with 2 other writers, and I'm going to actually get to go visit my agent at the literary agency in person. I've not ever met him in person. It's just been
Really, you never met?
No, just on the phone and email and maybe a Zoom.
And so you got him because you just on submission you just sent him queries?
So I decided, one night I was on the site and I thought, gosh, what are you afraid of? Just start querying agents. The worst thing that can happen is that they tell you no. And so I think what they wanted was a cover letter and maybe a brief summary, and he requested the whole manuscript. And that was very validating, first of all, to have someone at that level think that your work's worthy enough to put it out into the world. I mean, oh my gosh, that's the whole submission process.
Oh, it's brutal.
It's brutal.
It's brutal.
It's brutal. You'll have you'll have one editor who'll say, I love the women's voices. I connected with them. I didn't like the women's voices. Didn't connect with them at all. So it really is so subjective.
So subjective. And that's something to keep in mind. I know when I was a baby writer, I don't know why I was thinking that somebody had the magic bullet. And all I needed to do was find that person with the magic bullet and everything was going to be. But you come to know that everything is subjective.
Yeah.
I mean, your opinion, it's all going to be different, just different takes. And what you have to find is
Sure.
a champion.
Exactly. And there's someone out there that will love your book. And there will be people out there that I went into it just prepared myself. Not everyone will love your book. Be ready.
Are you working on another?
So I'm at a crossroads. So I've got 2 ideas. I've started one, but when I was writing the epilogue for the cicada tree, I just wondered what Annalise's life might be like at 14.
Oh.
So it's either that or a novel which is told from the perspective of a ghost. With the working title In That Quiet Earth.
The what?
In That Quiet Earth, which is a literary allusion to a line from Wuthering Heights.
Oh, okay.
So I've got to decide it quickly, because my goal is to have something maybe by this time next year possible, or at least maybe a first draft.
Awesome. Or Annalise at 14.
Annalise at 14. And I know the inciting incident, and I know exactly how it went.
Wow. Okay, so we'll have to stay tuned, I guess, to find out. All right, other questions from the audience. Oh, yeah,
So,
Janet.
First is a comment, as I watched the weather, and I was thinking that we were expecting severe storms on the day that you were arriving, I thought that was an omen. And I wanted to ask you about, first of all, you touched every sense. And one of the things I found most unusual was Annalise, when the music, she can taste the music. And I wanted to know, where did that come from? Because I've never come across that before, and it really conjured up a lot of thoughts on, as now I listen to music.
So the question is, where did Robert come up with this most awesome trait that Annalise has? She can taste music.
Yeah, so this particular summer is the first time that she ever is able to taste music, and she's able to actually sing music. And I was fascinated with this condition called synesthesia, and so I took that condition and I just sort of made it my own and turned it supernatural. So that's sort of where that came from.
Yeah.
And I actually have a friend who I did not know this until a few weeks ago. I had a book launch gathering in Atlanta, and she said, and I knew she played the piano. She said, I have synesthesia.
Oh.
She has.
Yeah, she said I can actually taste music.
Wow.
Yeah. And well, now you tell me. Then you would have been a great source of research.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever heard of it.
No, I've never heard of that either.
Yeah, but how did you even know to Google it, to check it out?
Well, so I don't know that synesthesia. I'm not quite sure by its traditional means it's that you're actually tasting music. So I just sort of did that on my own.
Oh,
but
good.
sometimes it has to do with color
Oh,
and letters.
okay. Awesome. Other questions for Robert? Yeah, Dana.
I love Southern fiction, and so of course I loved your book. But the kids are one thing, but you nailed the older characters as well too, like Miss Wessa and Annalise's mother and stuff. Do you have older relatives that are from the South? And how did you draw to get that perfect? Because you had not just, it was beautiful writing, but you
Thank
really
you.
had a great dialogue. And
Yeah,
lovely.
dialogue is stellar, isn't it?
Yes, it was beautiful.
So the question is about, we've been talking a lot about the children. What about the adults? Because you did a magnanimous job with them too. As Dana said, you just nailed it. And you really, the dialogue is so spot on.
So the story, as you know, is predominantly about women, and men really sort of take a backseat role in the book, really only stepping in on occasion to cause trouble.
Well,
Exactly. So I think that it's sort of in a way, the characters, of course, are all flawed, and of course you've got Cordelia and Melissa who have their own issues, but it's sort of a love letter to the Southern women I've known. My mom, my aunts, my grandmothers, great grandmothers. I always spent. I always wanted to be where the women were. So during like holiday gatherings, I would kind of like steal into the kitchen, or my mom was having like a garden club gathering, which was always a big deal. I would just sort of like sneak down the hall and press my ear against the door. So I was so fascinated with the conversations, because there's so much that the interaction is so different than what the men would do when they would congregate. It's just this language I never quite seemed to understand. So yeah, I was always listening. I'm an observer. I think creative people, we do sort of dwell on the fringe, and we listen. And if I'm not anything else, I'm an active listener and an eavesdropper.
so be careful what you all are saying.
So I'm fascinated though with the rhythm of people's voices.
Yeah.
And the lyrical quality of them.
Well, do you read it out loud when you write?
I do.
Okay. After you've written it, or do you talk it as you go?
So if you were a fly on the wall, you would think that I was an insane person. When you watch me, right? But yeah, I'll stop and I'll record like on my cell phone. I'll pass and I'll listen to it, because you can hear things that get hung up along the way. So I'll write a little bit, and then I'll read sections of it.
Yeah,
out
because
loud.
very lyrical. Your writing is incredibly lyrical. It's almost like musical.
So that's, for me, I think that I try my best to paint with words. And I think that words are like notes too. So I hope, that's, for me, I love a melodic lyrical quality to writing, and that's, and I have to be careful because I tend to overwrite first pass, and then you have to pull yourself back and subdue it a bit so it's not quite so over the top.
Right,
You have to rein yourself in.
Well, you did a beautiful job. All right, another question? Someone else? No one else?
Okay.
Okay, Terry.
You're forcing me down.
Terry says, I
When
wanted
do
to
you
do another
find
one.
the time to write when you have a daytime job? That's what I would like to know.
Yeah, how does he have time to write when he has a daytime job? And the commute in Atlanta must be horrible.
So the commute's a little better than it was. Our corporate office has moved, so I think it's like maybe 30 minutes to get into the office and 30 minutes to get home, which is unheard of in Atlanta. So I have to get up when I'm writing about 4:30 in the morning, and I write till about 6:30 till I have to get ready to go to work. And then weekends are my favorite writing time. And I'm a morning person, so like I can't write this time of day. I can read this time of day, and I can daydream in my head about what I might want to do tomorrow, but nothing special is going to happen after 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah, because I'm glad you asked that, Terry, because I wondered too how you managed. Because I was thinking of a commute in Atlanta would be an hour and a half each way.
And in a way too, that's kind of writing time.
Okay.
Because I'm composing in my head, and there are times where if I don't write something down, or if I don't record it on the cell phone, I'll forget it. So so I'm always thinking, I'm always in my head.
Did you always want to be a writer, little boy? Did you?
I felt in the 3rd grade, I thought that it might be possible to be a writer. I was in Miss Glenda Morton's 3rd grade class, and there was a local writer, and I didn't know. At that point, I thought that writers were sort of like unicorns. They lived in far off places. They wouldn't have access to them, especially a boy like me in Cairo, Georgia. And she came and she spoke to our class, and it just so happened that day, I was sitting on the front row. I think we rotated our seats like every week, and I always loved being able to be at the front. So, an obnoxious kid, I always liked to be right there in the middle of everything. And she came and she told her story. She'd written this book called Stone Gables. She talked about her writing process and how the story came to be. And I held on to every word and went home and, of course, repeated everything to my mother. So I think it was in the 3rd grade I thought. And I've never forgotten that. That just that one experience, that one childhood experience where someone outside of your frame of reference comes in and shows you different ways of life and different ways of being, which is so important for kids today, I think.
Oh, totally.
And so I've never forgotten that moment. And I think it was that exact moment I thought, I think I would tell a story one day.
Wow. What was your major in Florida?
Oh my gosh. So initially I was going to be a communications major, changed majors, and then I'm a political science, international affairs major.
Really?
Yeah. But
Wow.
don't ask me anything about politics.
Okay. Well, okay, Dana.
The cover of your book, did you come up with that, or did your publisher? Because it's beautiful. I would pick that
Thank
book
you.
up.
Yeah, it
just
is
because
awesome, isn't it?
I'm so
It
curious
pops.
about the
So,
cover.
so one of my greatest nightmares in life would be to have an ugly book cover. So the minute that I signed on with them, I began obsessing. Oh my God, I'm picking an ugly book cover. I'm not able to live. And so in the contract, they said, you can have input, but we may or may not listen to you. So I kind of took things into my own hands, and I worked with a designer, and I just approached a publisher. I said, I have these prototypes. What do you think about these covers? And they're like, oh my gosh, those are great. Can we use those? And so we picked the yellow one, and the only note from the publisher was, make the font larger. And so we adjusted. So
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I was very lucky.
So you worked with a designer to do this, and you submitted it.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
They took it. Thank God.
Wow. It's beautiful, and I love how the book kind of wraps around. I love, even the back of it's beautiful too. Because I agree with you. You'd pick this book up.
I
It
would,
pops. Yeah, it pops. Are you happy with it?
Oh, extremely, yes. And in my mind too, there are these, like, sort of getting a sense of what the cover would look like, even before I had even finished the novel. It's like these creative exercises, I think,
Yeah.
help move me forward.
Okay.
Like, I even, like, made this little, very simple book trailer. I have a book trailer that a friend of mine collaborated with me on, but I did sort of a slideshow where I took visual images of things that I looked at and that inspired me when I was writing the book. So I'm an extremely visual person. So I would do those little creative exercises where, okay, what would a book trailer look like? And I wasn't even really through with the novel yet, but it helped me visualizing the end product, what might the cover look like and what might a book trailer look like.
Awesome. So you were kind of willing it into being by
Yeah.
seeing all of that.
But I'm a firm believer in visualization
Yeah.
and just imagining something happening, what you would feel like and be like and look like in that moment. I've always been, since I was a little boy, anytime that anything that I really wanted, I've always visualized it. And of course, you have to work hard at it. You just can't think, oh yes, I'd like to write a book. You actually have to do it.
So that writer who came in, is she still alive? Do you know?
She is, yes, and she attended I went home to Cairo, Georgia, a few weeks ago, and there was an event at the Roddenberry Memorial Library, which is a library that I went to when I was a boy and through high school, and my 6th grade teacher was there.
Oh.
My high school English teachers were there.
Oh.
Yeah, it was a very emotional day.
Gosh, I know they're proud of you.
They seem to be.
Yeah, of course.
There were like 60 people there. What you have to know that this was on a Saturday, and just a town over, I was competing with Rattlesnake Roundup.
But you did good,
I
did you?
did. I sold all the books.
Good for you.
Oh,
Has this just been awesome?
Yes.
Is he not the thing? Really, Robert, you are. I'm just gonna tell you, I got chills. And when I get chills, that means something's going on here. You're the thing. You're the real deal. You can write. This is the absolute pleasure. I just love seeing the accolades, and they're just getting started.
Thank you so much. And thank you for coming. Thank you for reading the book. It really is a dream come true, to be in this place.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. And to be here in Pat Conroy territory. It's crazy. I just, I keep thinking I'm gonna wake up.
No, you're just gonna keep going. All right. So, au revoir. Yeah, we're gonna, I think it's set up back there.
Yes. If it's signed.
We're gonna, Robert's gonna be back there, and I'll be happy to. Yeah, I'm gonna sit with you. Yeah. Because we're gonna sign each other's books.
Yeah.
We've not done that. All right.
And if anybody doesn't have a book or needs another book,